Welcome back to Drift Garage. On the last episode we started,
Just gonna give it the old double wrench.
on this episode we're gonna make, where's Turk?
Lift, damn it!
As I was going through this car, it looks like some of the factory pieces were taken out and some of the wiring got cut back, but all these wires were cut all flush, and what happens there is you might have some wires shorting out and touching each other and causing issues down the way. So I went through and you cut all your pigtails off to different lengths so you can tape them up and not have any ground out.
So the idiot blew this motor up because he used the wrong hose on the wastegate.
Yep.
It overheated itself, it charred, and it cracked.
Got a little hot here, dried out the hose.
He also used
a worm style clamp, which is, you know, not the worst thing to use, but you gotta be extra careful with these because if you over tighten it, you can actually cut into the rubber. And so it causes a failure point. And if you look real close here, you can see where it actually ripped right at the edge of that worm clamp and caused the leak, which caused the overboost because the actuator was not opening this valve to let the pressure through and control the overall boost level.
Yeah, the motor was probably feeling pretty bitchin' right up until about 5 seconds later when it had no pressure.
It's odd that they always feel real good before they blow up.
Hey, yo. What you want to do is use a silicone hose and maybe just a little bit of safety wire, not over tighten the safety wire, that's easy to do, and or a zip tie. It just needs a little bit of pressure on there to hold it on.
Motor's apart, obviously. We did have to take a lot of the accessories off to swap over to our new long block, but we did want to dive a little bit deeper and see what actually happened to this block.
You want to know what the hell's wrong with this thing. If something's blowing up, you want to see what piston it was, just out of curiosity. So it's the number 2 piston, burnt right down to the ring, and it scorched the cylinder wall pretty bad. If you wanted to reuse this, you probably have to do 0.5 to 1 point bore over. There's no point in really doing that.
It's a lot of trouble to break it down, clean it, new pistons, machine work, and assembling it all back together. We're not going for crazy horsepower, so we're just going to use another stock engine.
And the other weird thing that we came across is this super gunky buildup in 1, 2, and part of the third cylinder water jackets.
I think he put in some sort of like magic cool, like type solvent that just
something that gunked it up and probably was not helping cool the side of the engine here.
You're watching too many infomercials, idiot. But anyway, this thing's garbage, so let's take whatever is salvageable and get on that new block, get back to work.
Let's get to it.
All right, well, we just got the motor from Ichiban JDM. This thing's looking pretty good. You know, it's got a couple miles on it, but it should clean up.
Definitely showing some miles on the top of the head area, but it should be fine.
But it's already pre-broken in. We're good. So we popped the valve cover off and you know, do a quick visual inspection. Everything looks fine. And next thing we did was take the cams out because we're going to be putting in bigger ones, of course.
So we're going to be replacing these cams with some aftermarket ones. One of the main things you want to be able to do is put your motor at top dead center. And how you do that, or how I do that to guarantee that it is at top dead center, is find a couple extensions, you take the spark plug out of the number 1 cylinder, put it in there, and you crank the pulley until this is at its top dead center. So there's 6 marks on the crank pulley, and these are what you use to set your timing. This mark that's in yellow, it's a different color than the rest. They usually do that because this is the mark that you want to line up with top dead center. So it's currently at top dead center. I'm just going to make one rotation just so you can see how low this actually goes. It goes very far, and it comes back up. All right, there you have it. That's how you put the motor at top dead center. That's going to allow you to change camshafts and do a reinstall in a much easier way. So when you're taking the cams out, one of the first things you want to do that's going to set you up for an easier install is put the motor at top dead center. Number 2, zip tie the timing chain to the cam gear so you don't lose your mark or skip a tooth or anything like that. So you just basically mark it with the zip ties, and then you can just pop those right back onto the new camshafts when you get them in. Now when you're loosening up the cams, there's a lot of tension on each cam cap from the valves pushing up. So what you want to do is loosen them all in a very even fashion. Otherwise, if you loosen one here on this side and one at the front, and the cam actually might crack. I've seen that happen before. So what you do is start in the middle one, loosen those 2 up just a little bit, crack them loose. You move to the back one, move to the front one, and just kind of in that order until you loosen all the tension off of the camshaft, and then you can remove the caps. Make sure you also do not mix up the caps. You can see here we have all of our stuff. It's just kind of laid out on the table properly, just as it was installed in the head, and then you pop the new cams in and just throw those caps back on. Tighten them all down in an even fashion, just like you did on the removal. Torque them down properly, and you're good to go.
But of course, the first thing you gotta do is use the appropriate oil to make sure that you don't score up your brand new cams that are obviously nice and dry. So you get a little bit of base coat down, crank them in, get them spinning, no problem. So the cams we went with are the Brian Crower 264s. They give 264 degree of duration, which is longer than stock, which means the amount of time that the valve is open is longer than before, allowing more air and fuel to get in. And they also have a higher lift so that the valve actually pushes down further to also give more room for the air and the fuel to get in. So just overall, more air, more fuel, more spark, more bang, more power.
And remember, just installing a set of cams isn't going to give you the most amount of horsepower out of those camshafts. You have to get your engine tuned properly to maximize the benefits of those bigger lifts and bigger cam lobes.
So yeah, this might look a little overwhelming, but it is a pretty easy job, especially if you follow along the tips that we just gave you. Now this style engine uses rocker arms to open up the valves. So the cam rides in this valley and pushes on these little guys to push the valves down and open up. But the problem is, since they're loose like this, they can kind of pop off with a little bit too much rev limiter, or
I've had that happen so many times.
You've had it happen.
So many times.
I actually haven't ever had it happen because I run these rocker arm stoppers, and what those do is put a little bit of pressure down on the rocker arm to help it from popping off. But
I don't know. I feel like these may or may not do anything. One thing's for sure, it worked for Chris. It didn't work for me. But they don't cost that much money, so it's not a bad idea to grab them just in case. So one of the last things that you have to do after installing camshafts is stab the crank angle sensor. Now this is sometimes overlooked, and something I've done a million times is you get all hyped up, you get everything on, you want to start the engine up, and you put the valve cover on and forget to stab this thing. So then you got to pull those 14 nuts all off and pull the valve cover back off. But what you have to do with the crank angle sensor is line up the first dot. Usually this one is orange if there's still paint left on it. You set it right to that on this line here on the back, and when you're stabbing it into the engine, it's going to rock forward, and now the second dot should line up with the mark on the back of the crank angle sensor. And when you know that lines up and these holes are still able to be bolted into the head, you're in good shape. All right, we're finally doing something that is awesome. Probably my favorite thing is installing a new turbocharger.
that's right.
And we got this sweet upgraded unit. It's the GTX 2867R from Garrett. And I've seen this turbo do 400 wheel horsepower on an SR with race gas on a really good tune. Quick spool, probably full boost by 3,000 RPM or sooner than that.
Yep.
Planes off at the high end, but that's fine. I mean, you want all your power down low, right? You want that thing to be full boost before you put your foot to the floor.
Yeah, let me see that thing. It's got 0.60 front housing and a 0.63 turbine housing, which, like you said, gives a lot of spool, but still making good power up top. And the internal gate makes it really easy to install because with this bottom mount turbo, we run the actuator, which controls this gate, which is what opens and allows the exhaust gases to go around the turbine wheel, control your boost levels. But yeah, this thing is a killer bolt-on piece.
Awesome, awesome turbo for the SR20. Installing a bottom mount T2 flange turbo is actually a pretty simple install. The one main thing you want to focus on is clocking the turbo properly, and that would be the oil feed and the drain vertical as possible, where the oil drains back into the pan properly. The other thing is also getting the proper restrictor. A lot of these Garrett turbos can only handle so much oil pressure, and your oil pump will overpressurize the cartridge inside, and then it will actually come out the seals because there's too much pressure in it, ruin the life of your turbo or cut it in half. So make sure that you do a little bit of research on the specific center section and turbo size that you buy, and that you have the right restriction for the oil feed line. When it gets mounted on, everything's going to be as vertical as possible. We're going to make our vibrant AN lines for the water fittings, and this thing should be pretty simple to install.
All right, next step is getting this turbo mounted to the engine, and so we brought in our good buddy Kristaps Blues from Latvia. He's a turbo specialist, so you put a turbo on an engine before, right?
Never.
Oof. We got this, right?
Yes. Thanks for watching this episode of Drift Garage. If you guys have any questions about installing a turbo system on your project car,
or any questions at all, make sure to leave them in the comments below, and also tell us about the turbo setup in your car.